Mr. Arora, for being here and sparing your time to visit the ISB. I know that the readers of ISB Insight are going to be very intrigued to learn more about what you have planned, more importantly, what you've done already for Digicor. I'd like to start off with just a couple of general questions, and then I have a couple of things that I wanted to ask you, in particular about your plans with Digicor. So we read that you were, in 1999, an $8 million company in revenues, and now you stand at more than 250 million, more than 4,000 employees. So how did you manage that, or what did you think were the key drivers of this tremendous growth?
So thank you for having me at ISB, and it's really a pleasure to come to see excellence in India in academic education. After having been exposed to some excellence, through my own experiences overseas, I think this is a fabulous place to be. And I think as far as Digicor's story is concerned, it's a unique thought from what the textile industry in India can achieve in just one aspect that I looked at the arbitrage available on the higher intellectual capital. And I'm not saying this because I'm at ISB. If you actually play in the space where you are kind of offering a blue-collar workers, I would say, input as a product, you would not really get a big delta. But if you looked at an MBA on an engineer, you would be able to really monetize far better. So Digicor went about chasing design and complex, I would say, niche product in the beginning, where the manufacturing challenge was not so much what is the cost. The manufacturing challenge was, can you do what the Europeans are doing or the developed nations are doing at a far better value? Okay. And we took that challenge on quite seriously, because India offered a huge amount of textile skill, huge amount of advantage on textile raw material, and I think we dealt with that challenge successfully, and that's why we saw this good growth in the first 10 years. We also, by nature of the demanding consumers, expectations from what product is given, the Western countries are far more sophisticated on what a consumer is actually getting. We kind of got sculpted into shape to be able to deliver world standard product. And then when we decided that India was coming of age, we were kind of naturally ahead of Indian consumer expectation. Okay. So the Digicor story is actually a change in this logical sequence of a company going global.
Okay. So it's both the fact that you were a bit visionary compared to others in terms of anticipating what did India need, as well as the natural growth story of India, that the market had developed, or the market size was opening up, and you had already kind of preemptively were thinking about how to take this forward.
So I'd like to set one thing very clear, that we have 70% of our business still outside India. We are the largest player in the world in our small little niche space of curtain and upholstery fabric, and we are still growing both sides of our business, and we see a lot of value. Mm-hmm. We are not a B2C player internationally yet, and that's because we've discovered the B2C challenge in India, and we would like to address that challenge satisfactorily to its full potential before we decide to dilute our energy on trying to build a brand abroad. So we are playing abroad just based on our design and manufacturing and ability to handle complexity, customized product on those skills. And in India, we are going right through the value chain, right up till retail.
Okay. So, I was going to ask that later, but since you brought it up, let me ask a little bit about the challenges. As you rightfully mentioned, you clearly dominate the textiles business internationally and domestically in the B2B space. But as you pointed out, you're growing also tremendously in the B2C space, and it seems as if there's room for growth still. So what I'd like to learn a little bit more about is, what are the challenges that you as a company have faced in the B2C setting, and what makes the direct customer interfacing aspect of business more difficult?
Yeah, so I think our B2C journey has been one of the biggest learnings that I have had. I'm an engineer by education, so branding is as far one can travel from an engineering education, as possible. But after building, our company, like I said earlier, was always good at manufacturing plus design. So when you make a differentiated product, there's a high scope of putting a name on it and saying that, I stand for good looking product or good design. If you make a product which is just surely only superior because of durability, it may or may not matter in certain categories. I think in our particular for our particular end consumer, what really matters more is the aesthetic appeal, the fit to the home interiors, and of course today quality is a given that whatever you supply should have a certain durability standard for sure. When we went about the world market, we saw that the highest power in the value chain is wielded by the company that is putting its name on the product.
Okay.
That was a learning and observation that just came by being a B2B supplier to brands. And we saw that brands were spoiled for choice, and they had the rule book and the pen in their hand. And obviously every day what they wrote down was something which bettered their life and which bettered their bottom line. So we kind of learned from there that in India we should step in to be the brand that wields the power.
Sure.
So we built a company outside the gate of the factory. I like to use this word always, that it's outside the gate of the factory, which kind of supported the factory.
Okay.
And which did justice to the value proposition that the design and manufacturing capabilities were doing. Now when we went around doing this, there was really no brand in our industry, and I'm not able to express this briefly, so just bear with me that in an industry where there is really no brand, even a very simple thing like putting a recommended retail price on a product or putting your name on a product has huge amount of I would say dissonance from your multi-brand retailers, from your customers. You are trying, and this is the second piece of the challenge, that you're trying to communicate to a consumer, and unless you have your own retail point, the whole brand experience, the brand promise, the brand communication is in a certain way hijacked. It's not really under your control. And the channel partner is too driven by profit and not so driven by what is the good value that I'm bringing to my customer.
Sure.
And we never expected that the channel partner would be driven by our I would say ambition or motive, but we always thought that the consumer and us and the channel partner were going to be aligned in the interests of the consumer primarily, and then everybody needs to make a fair profit by doing a good job. But that has been a challenge. But on the flip side, the fantastic learning that the journey has provided is the textbook works.
Okay.
That the whole brand communication really brings the consumer to the sales point, querying the brand, trying to discover the brand, and the channel partner finds that extremely, I would say, exciting, and says, I need to stock the brand, I need to align with the brand, and things start to fall in shape.
So it incentivizes them also to basically align themselves.
Yeah, they say the brand is this, here is a company that gives me a product and also sends me a customer. So they're covering me from both sides. And so we've learned through the journey that the challenge is to go out and now make the brand available. So the challenges keep changing. You start from getting a name into 200 million people's heads. And the biggest challenge there that we faced was the size of our industry. When you are trying to go up against an automobile industry or a mobile phone industry where there are 4 zeros extra in the size of the industry, the attention of mindshare, or the mindshare that you're trying to capture, is warranting a huge amount of hammering, which is serious money.
Right.
And you've got to be sure that this is going to bring echo. So when you're spending on brand, you're spending on non-intangibles, and if you're doing it coming from a hardware manufacturing background where you spend money on machines, this is another I would say adventure for you, that you spend money on something and you don't know the classic theory of advertising, which part is working, which part is not working, how much is it working. Also, we are in an industry where there isn't a high frequency of consumption. So it's not like you go and see the advertisement and you'll go and change your home furnishings. You will change your home furnishings on your own calendar.
Right.
And therefore, we can't really expect to get instant inflection in sales and to then carry on. Because one thing I can clearly say that I was very sure about was that we should not try to make any conclusions about our brand investment before 3 years, because it takes that much time to
kind of seed the idea, seed the brand in their
to
mind
just get the name
until
in.
they're ready to finally.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Fantastic. So related to that, actually, I have some more questions. I've observed some of the things that you've done on your B2C interfacing ventures. The question that I have is, there are all these reports about India is opening up, Indians are spending more money, and it's true, but by and large, they're spending money on conspicuous goods, things that can signal my status, can signal what kind of a person I am. So you do see that the Richemont group is opening up their stores here. You see that the St. Regis Hotel is opening up, because when I go to the St. Regis Hotel, when I buy a particular brand of bags, it's easily observable by others and it says something about me. Now the challenge that I see, and I want to know, how have you conquered this, is that how did your brand build up loyalty amongst customers, given that it's a somewhat privately utilized good? With limited visibility. It's not until people come into your home that you talk about it. And that there's no, unlike the Louis Vuittons of the world, there's no really identifiable logo per se. So how can a brand build a kind of a special space in customers' minds, given that you want to get your customers to the point where they not only like de decor and they prefer it, but they also are proud to own a sofa or a chair that's been upholstered by de decor?
So obviously, we're still in the journey, so I wouldn't say that we've met all of these aspirations yet. However, again, I say that the basics apply. Every consumer wants to buy something which he or she knows that, there's someone standing behind this. Okay. It's quality. It's not an insignificant amount of money for the consumer. We at D-Decor have positioned our brand imagery in a manner that I think the consumer kind of tends to believe this is expensive, but we have a pretty good price range and a lot of depth at every point in that range. We decided that we are going to ensure that the consumer gets choice, and our biggest, I would say, communication to the consumer through the ads hopefully has been that this is something that helps your home become more beautiful. This is something that helps you dress your home the way you'd like to. We provide you enough options, and this is something that is made by, when we started off, we were the third largest player in the world, the first communication when it went out, and now we are the largest player in the world. So it's not something which comes out of nowhere, suddenly arrives. So we try to get credibility for the consumer to have faith that this is an investment that I should make. In terms of the consumer wearing some of the branded products as a badge, I think which is what you're saying, which kind of elevates their social status. I don't disagree that their willingness to spend or pay premiums may be higher in those categories. D-Decor is not really trying to charge the consumer a super premium. It's trying to, work on a very good value proposition, and the discovery at the sales point is what has led, I think, to people, appreciating the brand and what it does for them.
And I can vouch for that personally, is that although the initial, I think in 2010, the Shah Rukh Khan ads, they definitely brought to light that this brand even exists. So the awareness was definitely solved. But in my opinion, as a customer, I know my sofas are actually upholstered by Decor, is that when I went to these retail outlets, although I was aware of the brand, it was the variety and the quality of the designs that got me hooked, that really won my loyalty. So I think you're right, is that you've invested fabulously in giving people high quality, very aesthetically forward type of designs, and that's what kind of is going to the long run.
Right, and just like St. Regis is arriving here, to take your example, people are arriving in international destinations. People are reading international magazines. There is a lot of influence, of European signature, Western, consumer, I would say, innovation, the innovation which is available to the Western consumer, rather, that the Indian consumer gets a natural propensity to, want to have.
Sure.
And making it available in India has really delighted, interior designers, has delighted Indian consumers. And, I'm not saying that we've completed this endeavor. Our thought is that in India, real estate is very, very expensive relative to the income level. I would say, there is data out there, but, if I can just, stick my neck out and say that India's probably got the most, skewed ratio on the value of real estate to per capita income.
Sure.
It's very difficult for people to be able to buy a bigger house,
right,
and to buy a new house. But, everybody spends a good 12 to 14 hours at home.
Right.
And how do you make your environment more, I would say, amenable to you, to your own family? And of course we all have close friends and families dropping over, so you would like things to be aesthetic, right, and beautiful. So I think Decor in its own way is trying to help that problem solve for Live Beautiful.
So you're literally making their lives more beautiful. Okay. So, these are another set of questions I was going to ask a little bit later, but since we're talking anyway about design, what I wanted to know a little bit about, and you've hinted at this, is that, can you tell us a little bit about where does the inspiration from Decor come from? How, if at all, do you do consumer research to figure out what will resonate with people or what will not likely resonate?
Yeah, so, I think over here I'd like to subscribe to the view which comes from my own personal, interaction with all the clothing brands. Sure. So I love to give this example that, if you walked into an Armani store and Mr. Armani came up to you and said, "What should I make for you?" I think that kills the Armani brand.
Absolutely.
If you go up to Mr. Armani and you tell, and he tells you, "Listen, this is what I think you should be wearing to be looking fashionable." Yeah. That's how the brand starts. Sure. So it is to that thinking that Decor subscribes. It doesn't get arrogant or restricted by saying it is this look or nothing. It keeps releasing new colors and designs in a very rapid, I would say frequency, in a very high frequency at close interval, which gives people direction, okay, but doesn't, I would say withdraw choice. So we are, in a certain sense, trying to subscribe to, fast fashion as a supply chain model, and we pride our manufacturing and design capability, and to bring bring that differentiation to the consumer is only possible if we up the game with a lot of choice.
But you're also guiding them, you're saying?
Yes, we are guiding them, but all our ads follow a theme of introducing 6 new colors every year, sure, which we call the colors of this year. And there will be, I would say, enough design offering and construction variation, sure, for curtains and upholstery, and price point, I would say, range, for people to be able to pick from there.
Which I think seems to be the best practice in related industries, because my interest is in aesthetics. I know, for example, that Pantone meets every year essentially, and they pick, like this year, for the first time I think in the history, they picked 2 colors. They said it's rose and it's going to be, it's a combination of blue and pink essentially. So the way that I guess historically in these industries that it's worked is that it's more of a top-down model, is that these trends are decided and they make their way to the runway and ultimately down to even a Walmart where you're picking up a $10 sweater, but those design decisions influence, I think, more than people realize.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at the story of Zara, for example, one of the world's most successful companies, which has led to somebody, I must proudly say, in the textile business, become the 2nd or the 3rd richest person in the world, is the promise of the story comes from seeing what I would say the absolute pinnacle brands are introducing at fashion, but quickly emulating them and releasing them at good price points. So in a certain sense, D-Decor is trying to bring, and the fashion all flows from women's apparel. The runways and I would say the fashion shows in Milan and Paris are really got too much equity built over the years for someone else to come in and say, listen, this is fashion, that is not fashion.
Right.
I think these people are holding, that position or that seat of power that they decide or they advise the world, what is trending this year. And from there, there's a spin-off into home furnishings, there's a spin-off probably into watches, and it goes into many different areas. And like you correctly said, everybody then starts adapting it for their consumers' price point onto their shelves.
But I've heard that the best business leaders in the world, whether it's in fashion or Steve Jobs used to say that when he was asked, do you do consumer research to figure out what people want? He said, why do it? If I would have asked them 15 years ago, do you want an iPhone or what do you want? They would have probably at best come up with a touchscreen BlackBerry. But how do you give something to somebody that they don't even know that they want or they need?
Well, I won't say I don't subscribe to this view, but there are many ways, going about what your offering should be. If you've got a need which you can imagine, and you can kind of outthink your consumer, excellent. If you do consumer research and you can identify a pattern need, I think excellent. So I'm not averse to going and asking consumers or doing consumer research. We haven't done any of that for color or design. Okay. I'll just say that. Sure. We haven't done any of that for color or design. We really believe that D-Decor's international business, 70% of our company's business is actually dependent on us being pertinent, relevant with the right fashion proposition worldwide. And that is happening only because we are wired into the kitchen, not even visiting the restaurant so as to speak. Yeah. That's too late. Right. So we are wired into the kitchen. We are with the art studios. We are with the design houses who are proposing or co-working these propositions.
Sure. Some other questions that I have that are still related is questions I had about, the analysts, for example, at ISP who had prepared for this meeting, they had been telling us about how you've been integrating vertically by expanding into consumer retail stores. They told us Asaya, and that you have further plans of opening up more retail, lifestyle, and decor stores. And we see this happening in other industries. When I look, for example, at Usha, and you're from Bombay, so you've seen the Hab in Linking Road. Although it's not meant to be, it's a different goal, but essentially what they're doing is that they're trying to grow the base of users. People who thought that sewing was only for old women or housewives who are mending, they now know about the things. Or when I look at our own Lakme, HUL's Lakme, they vertically integrated by saying, why do we just make skincare and makeup? Why don't we provide the salons and bridal makeup services? So the question I have is that, and I see some evidence of this already with your retail stores, but if at all, what plans do you have perhaps for forward integration, going beyond being a textile manufacturer?
So, like I said, that we have a movement on outside the gate of the factory, and it has been successful in giving us, I would say, another asset which we call our brand now, because there's a promise, there's a trust in the brand, and yet at the final point of engagement, we are not 100% sure what is the consumer's experience going to be. Since we only had multi-brand outlets, we were not, I would say, convinced that the consumer was getting the complete brand experience. We were not sure, and also we were not able to pick up any insightful information. So we decided to pilot a few retail stores, and we were surprised that we would set up a store and no advertising. We would have a reasonably good amount of footfall, and we are not in any way trying to replace our multi-brand outlets, because we are available at 1,000+ outlets in India. We're just trying to insert 100 D-Decor stores, which can be, I would say, a good brand experience point, a good information exchange point, a good, I would say, convenience point for the consumer who is convinced that he wants to be buying D-Decor.
Okay.
And it helps us do things which improve the industry, because when you are a leader in your space, people are looking upon you for all the improvements, and whatever improvements you want to pilot, if you have your own ecosystem, you can then learn, play, and when it's successful, you can scale through your entire channel.
And I'm not sure if this is accurate, but I had read somewhere that at least when you had met your wife, you were actually in the business of manufacturing garments?
Yeah, I was in the apparel business. I mean, D-Decor is very much a story where a textile business in apparel has gone towards, home. We still have a small, ladies wear textile fabric business, which is, probably 10% of our business today. But we've been, it's a family business. I'm the third generation textile, I would say, entrepreneur. But home textile started in 1995, 96, and then after a huge amount of success in the small little piece of the apparel business that was given to me as my responsibility, after that succeeded a lot, it kind of fell off the cliff when the fashion wave changed. And I was, I would say, compelled to find alternate software for the same hardware and to motivate my team. And I had started home furnishings by compulsion, as lack of any other alternate.
Sure. But I'm wondering, given that now you have much more knowledge of the market, you're operating more in India in the consumer market, given the artistic and perhaps the manufacturing synergies, do you think that's something you would consider, is going back into apparel?
It's interesting that you asked me this question. We've been debating this internally from a long-term strategic choice perspective, that with all the things that we've improved in or what we are good at, we can, I would say, get a license to play in which other space. Okay. And since we understand, the supply chain, we understand design, and we understand branding, we think, and we understand the women consumer. Sure. We are hopeful that we will leverage these skills to another space. Sure. As I would say a little bit beyond the core if we decide to go.
Okay. And when you were opening up your retail outlets, did you consider, just to play devil's advocate, did you consider that rather than building up a retail outlet from scratch, which is, you have to invest in the branding, and although you've mentioned that it was successful even without going overboard, did you consider perhaps just acquiring a company that was already doing the right thing in the same space, and then perhaps infusing your D-Decor?
So when you're a 15-year-old company, your own managerial skills, they go through their own learning curve. Acquiring a company is for companies which have great managerial skill in transforming cultures. I think our story has been only about investing in excellence in the input and delivering or trying to deliver excellence on the output. For us to say that, we can take on an acquisition and transform it from sub-excellence to par excellence would be a very boastful hope that D-Decor really hasn't had the dream or the courage to yet, try to play in, especially in an area where we're new. Sure. So if tomorrow I was told that, there's a factory out there and can you, infuse some excellence into it or transform it and make it viable, yes, I think we could, definitely take that challenge on. But with retail, we really wanted that our store from ground up has the right size, has the right display, has the right technology inside, and we wanted to, when you do things with a clean blackboard, you can create something which is standing apart. Otherwise, you are always just for
playing around with
and just for saving some money at at the beginning or some time. I think we have had too much to lose if we disappointed the consumer's trust when he came into a D-Decor store. Sure. And therefore we really, even if in hindsight, we wouldn't want to do that.
Sure. So I agree. I think the organic growth of these retail stores affords you much more control and to stick to the vision that you have, to be true to the brand.
Exactly. Even just the location of each store has a certain consistency around it. We are not just picking up any store in any city.
Sure.
So we've done a few pilots in the initial phase. Like I said, we have a store in a mall, we have a store on the high street. We've done a slightly larger store, we've done a slightly smaller store.
Sure.
We've done a store where we have a lot of home furnishing stores nearby, right. And we've done a store in a residential catchment area where there was no store. So we did a lot of piloting and learning, and I don't know if somebody else's, I would say, footprint would match our learnings.
Sure. So you have the flexibility to basically learn as you grow as an organization. Another question that I had was regarding any plans that you have in terms of expanding the segments that you serve. As I see it, and please feel free to correct me, when I look at your price points and I look at the different outlets that you have, you seem to be serving the upper middle class Indian, perhaps upper middle class to upper class Indian. When you look at it, to some extent you have competitors, now whether they're a real threat or not, who are trying to get into home decor, into textiles, whether it's niche companies like Chumbak, which is now saying, you can outfit your sofas from us. Whether it's online retailers like Fab Furnish, they're trying to go at the same piece of the pie, but a slightly, I would say, lower segment of consumers.
Yes,
so I just wanted your perspective. Is that a segment, perhaps a lower tier of a lower segment that you would want to consider?
So my understanding of India is that people really struggle to get the courage to take a home loan, and by the time they get an equation that works for them, they're already touching 30, and most of the I would say consumers that we target is basically the woman who is greater than 30 years, going right up till 50, because once you're over 50, you are not the decision-making woman in your own house. Your daughter-in-law has taken over that, I would say, decision-making responsibility from you. After having, I would say, a very strong market share in the top 50% of the market, we are very keen to explore profitable opportunities in the bottom 50%. Sure. We are looking at coming up with different offerings and business models which will allow us to expand into some part of that market.
Okay. And do you think that would be under a different brand? Because it's also a challenge, right? Tata does it. You have the Jaguar and you have the Nano, and L'Oreal has your Giorgio Armani Cosmetics, and they have Maybelline, but it's a challenge. By and large, they seem to be operating under almost a different facade altogether.
Yeah, so one of the interesting debates that D-Decor is running inside is, should we have a brand extension or should we have a separate brand? And as we talk to different experts, the success of the D-Decor brand, will always tilt people's advice towards, stick with decor and just expand your price points.
Sure.
Don't really complicate or get into the unnecessary complexity. In our own industry, I think signature matters a lot as well.
Sure.
So, there could be, and there is, I think, a 25 to 30-year-old age group which is interested in a more younger, peppier signature.
Sure.
So we have learned from observing what our international customers are doing is they are actually doing another brand when there is another signature. Of course, if that signature is catering to another income group,
right,
yes, it would get positioned even price-wise slightly different from the first
sure,
brand. So I personally haven't made that decision yet, but we are in favor of looking at other brand, I would say, names as well,
okay,
to be coming from the D-Decor house. We are challenged in making this decision by only one criteria. It would cost us 2 times the money today compared to 5 years ago. Online and the Indian government and FMCG are now spending twice the amount of money that they were spending 5 years ago.
right.
So for us to go out and just have a very simple premise that we would like to build another brand and support the D-Decor brands,
It's costly.
is it a complication that we really want to do, especially because we did not really marry our brand to a narrow choice,
right,
and therefore we have both options on the table, and I think we'll be making this decision. I haven't really fixed my mind on this, or the team hasn't really made up its mind.
I mean, you see in parallel industries that brands choose to go either way. You can have the L'Oreal strategy of completely sub-brands, or look at what Mercedes and BMW have done with this introduction of the 1 Series or the A Series, is that without diluting the brand or the range of offerings, they've simply broadened the price points and the design, the sportier, lower price points and all. So I guess the case can be made.
Yes, but you have enough successes coming both sides. If you look at a Volkswagen, they have a Skoda going right up to a Bentley,
right,
and they have been very successful.
right,
They are arguably the largest car maker in the world,
right,
in 3 out of the last 5 years. And in a certain sense, when you are really cutting, I think, very wide across income groups, across demographics, another brand helps,
right,
on another purpose. So if you look at the story of the Taj hotels, the Taj group, the whole
right.
Vivanta right up till, Taj.
Recently, I believe, started about 5 or 6 years ago.
Exactly,
Yeah, that's
exactly.
right.
So I think that there are enough success stories both ways. Our own agency has given us the example of Samsung, where the driver and the, I would say the CEO sitting behind, both are using a Samsung phone
Right.
of very different price points, and both seem to be fine with that. So there are enough success stories of one brand being stretched, to cover more ground and
or
to create another brand. If we had the size, of the automobile industry, or an industry like the mobile phone industry, I would strongly tilt myself towards building another brand.
Right.
Because in a certain sense, if you have 2 brands into the industry, you definitely will increase market share as well.
Right. Because there's enough room. There's enough room to capture.
And also because you're hitting your competition
Right.
from 2 sides. You are making life tough for your competition because the consumer really may not know that a Bentley and a Skoda owned by the same company. And different horses for different causes, different needs. You can have the right promise to the consumer at the right time. But I think our size of industry, relative to the cost of advertising, will try to make us think very carefully about doing this.
Okay. I have just a couple of few general questions left. Many of our students have dreams of actually being entrepreneurs. Given that your family has built this business from scratch, you've done a tremendous job of scaling it up, you've seen numerous challenges, but you also seem to know how to navigate those challenges. What I want to know, are there any words of advice that you could offer the budding entrepreneurs that we have?
So my advice is very boring.
Anyway.
It's usually about don't underestimate the power of compounding, which actually means don't be in a hurry. Don't forget the hare and the tortoise story. Don't crash yourself in a haste. Please try to grow your business in proportion, like a circle expands in proportion. Expand your capabilities and opportunities in sync. If you have capital coming into your business, don't go, I would say, into 120% CAGR, because that will cause dilution of control, dilution of customer experience. It's boring because I think students believe all of this can be overcome very easily by new technology, new business models, by the quantum of engineers and MBAs available in India. So you and I can definitely start a startup and hire 2,000 people on day one. Yes, but can we align them? Can we make them function? So that is one piece of advice. And the other, I would say more important piece of advice is that I think revisit your ethics class from time to time during your career. And that's probably the most important thing that you should be remembering, that business comes to people who keep their promises. So the job that they teach you to a manager here at ISB, I guess, is to ensure that all stakeholders are I would say motivated to bring their best to a business. Right. And I would like them to remember that the easiest way to do it is to be honest and to be considerate of every stakeholder's interest. So in very student language, if you want to have a good party, make sure that every guest has a good time and he wants to come back. Make sure that you eat last, and be confident that there will be enough food on the table left for you. Sure. If you make everyone else have a good time.
So let me ask, even though I am a management professor and we teach people how to be managers, do you think entrepreneurship can be taught? Are people just born with a skill set? Or so, more specifically, through formal education systems like an MBA program, can you learn how to be an entrepreneur? Does it require something else?
So I think entrepreneurship can be practiced by observing what other good entrepreneurs have done, but most of it is about doing the right math and having the right gut. Okay. Thinking 2 steps ahead or working hard, and all of this should be sufficient. Okay. And I think it's a more a human trait about risk. I think some people have a significant nervousness with risk.
We become professors. Those are us. Those are the people who have no risk propensity. We go into academics.
And I think that's the only litmus test between, should you be pursuing entrepreneurship or not? Because more so today than any other time, because we live in a world that any organization or any entrepreneur, his outcomes are very determined by his efforts, strategy, thinking, hard work, choices, but also by the winds in the external environment. And there's a lot of unpredictability. Right. Also, the basic nature of business has changed. We live in a highly oversupplied world, and to find the right gap or white space in the market and to find a profitable one is itself challenging, but there are several out there that you can pursue, but you should be up for seeing, I would say some roller coaster before you see some highway. Sure.
So, and we were talking a little, I'll make this my last question, but we were talking about this earlier. When you think about, let's say, an MBA experience, both in the classroom, outside of the classroom, what are those skills do you think that an entrepreneur must have? What do you think they should be learning while they're here? Forget in the classroom, but in the larger life experiences, what matters?
I think everything they teach you at an MBA is God's gift to you before you start the journey of trying to run a business. It's God's gift to you that they've decided that all these things are necessary. I think the textbook really matters. you should be going back to all the good things that you've learned in the basic textbook in terms of strategy, planning, running good operations, finance, HR, IT, everything matters. If you want me, I play this trick game with students all the time, and I wouldn't have liked to say this to ISB because we hire a lot of ISBs here, that I often ask them to kind of prioritize what really matters out of all the things that they've learned. And there is no real right answer. I mean, it all matters in my opinion, but if something really matters the most and I had to pick one, I was compelled, I would choose human relationships. Okay. So not only HR on the side of your own employees, but even your interaction with people, that really matters.
So people skills do matter.
People skills matter as paramount. I think that is number one. Coming up with that very unique idea is not so much of a scalable, repeatable advice that you could give to your students, that each one of them needs to go home and come up with something that nobody's ever imagined. That's going to be having a very low hit rate, if I can say it that way. They're going to have a low hit rate. Some people are not going to come up with great ideas, and the ones who do are not going to see a high degree of success. So I think just dealing with people in the right way, being able to judge people, being able to understand who are the people we should be aligning with, choosing customers, and attracting talent, being able to, I would say, listen to your vendors who are experienced dealing with so much competition, and obviously trying to do some amount of innovation with the help of research institutes, etc. It's all your interaction with all of these stakeholders, and everywhere you're dealing with people.
Sure.
So a good understanding of putting yourself in other people's shoes really matters.
So empathy matters.
Empathy matters, absolutely. Ethics and empathy matter the most.
Fantastic. I think that's a wonderful note to end our interview on. I want to thank you again one more time for generously sparing your time. I'm sure this will be something that the ISB community, the larger community, genuinely appreciates. So thank you very much, Mr. Arora.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.